All right. Well, welcome everyone in person here and online. I guess you all are here now to the 2025 lecture series Consultants Role in Architecture. My name is Brian Stryzik. I'm an architect at Kennelly Architecture and Planning in San Francisco, but I was also the AIA East Bay board president in 2022. Since stepping down as president, I've been working on this lecture series, and this is the third year. We're kicking off the third year of it. The first 2 years, we had over 50 participants on these panels talking about various topics. It's been really interesting to see and hear from all of them. I'm glad that these conversations are happening here in the East Bay, and it's a wonderful thing for our chapter. In 2025, we're doing the series that's really about the roles and relationships between architects and consultants. So as you can see, we have a series of 1, 2, 3 to 6 of them, and this is the second one in our series. Tonight's teams will be discussing illuminating design, partnering with lighting consultants for a brighter project. Brighter, that's kind of clever, right? That's very nice. I like that. Each presenter will be doing a short presentation to share some of their works, their viewpoints on lighting, and then we'll do a moderated discussion. But we do want the engagement between us and you, so please don't hesitate to ask questions, catch my eye, however you want to do it, just start talking. All those are acceptable. Uh-oh. So we're gonna start the present. Yeah.
Are you on?
I don't know. I might be. Are we good, Mike?
Yeah, we said people online here, we don't have feedback.
Oh, nice. Awesome. We're gonna start the presentations by hearing from the design consultants first. So Tobias Holden, a principal at Banks Handle Lighting Design, and Kai Jaffe of 16500. And then move into the architects, Bill Bondi, a principal at Studio Bondi Architecture, assuming you also started Studio Bondi Architecture since it has your name in it.
What was the question?
I'm assuming you also started Studio Bondi Architecture?
Just the other guy.
Yeah.
No, yes.
And Lita Zuber, a senior design manager at Gensler. So interestingly, as we quickly approach the summer solstice and we're talking about lighting, Lita is a Lita.
Leave that. It's okay. It's tough.
Is it named after the pagan holiday?
It is not, but I'm very aware of Midsummer and that my name also represents a pagan holiday. Yes,
Yeah.
I am aware of that, but
Well,
it's not.
it's a pagan holiday about lights.
It is Greek. It is Greek. If you've ever heard the story of Leda and the Swan, it's Leda and the Swan.
That helps.
In Greek, the D is a the, and so you don't say D, you'd say the. So Leda. Yeah.
Wonderful. Before we get into the presentations, help me welcome all these people and appreciate them being here. All right, so before we start the presentations, I have a couple quotes to read and just want to get your guys' input on that. So Le Corbusier wrote, "Architecture is a learned game of forms assembled in light." I.M. Pei said, "The essence of architecture is form and space, and light is the essential element to the key to architectural design. Probably more important than anything. Technology and material are secondary." Any thoughts on either one of those?
I would agree with both those statements. I don't know if it's the most important thing, but it's certainly, if you don't have it, you don't have much to look at, right? So I think I was going to say later, but to say it now. I won't get into the reasons why. I was assisting with the making of the movie MacArthur with Gregory Peck, and it was The Escape from Corregidor, and I was working with the cinematographer for that. His name was Mario Tosi, who is quite accomplished, and he said to me that his job was painting with light. And I think in that respect, architecture is more like sculpting with light, because of course painting is two-dimensional, but I think light is what actually gives sculptural quality to the architectural space.
Yeah, I would agree.
How about the relationship of like artificial light versus sunlight? So I like when I read Le Corbusier's quote, I always thought it was talking about the sun. kind of preparing for this presentation, I was like, well, maybe we're talking about artificial light too, because it's still, like you said, it exposes the forms, right? So what's the relationship between artificial light and natural light?
Ooh, I like the idea of daylight and electric light,
Okay.
not artificial. Right? It's electric, but
Yeah.
I mean, for me, electric light as opposed to natural light is about the duality of space and how spaces can be affected, you know, by the occupants, by people in the space, and can spaces transform, you know, from day to night, and can it add more dynamism to these projects, to these constructed environments. So that's what I've been really intrigued with, because the sun is the sun, skylight's amazing, right? And the sky dome is amazing, and direct sunlight is what we all live for, right? Being Californians, so what can electric light bring to spaces?
Mhm.
So that's what I've been into lately, obviously.
Yeah. Anything else?
The difference, I mean, or the advantage of one, or
It's like, what the hell, how do you, I'm thinking of an example, like Alvar Aalto, right? He building in the north, doesn't get a lot of light in the winter. So, but he still wants skylights for when the sun comes, and he angles them so the sunlight comes through. But during those times when it's dark out, he puts a light tucked in a little cove, so you still get light. So the skylight's still acting as kind of a lens for the sun. And so I was just interested just to know if you had any interesting anecdotes or stories or thoughts about the relationship of the two.
I mean, I'll say that, Alvar Aalto is one of my favorites, and for that very reason, right? I remember him saying that, when it is dark, if your electric light can mimic what your daylight would have, right? So that's the angle at which your electric light should come from, the same angle and from the same places that your natural light would come from. When you look at his libraries that he did, right? I don't think we design as much like that as we should, but I think that there are instances when you certainly can, right? I work with tall buildings a lot, and so it's not always possible. But I was just thinking, just this past weekend, I was in a friend's home, and there, it was like a cabin, and it was beautiful day outside, and we were inside, unfortunately, and everybody was sitting around in this, like, dim living room, and I kind of gravitated towards a spot in the sun, very awkwardly standing behind my husband, and they were all seated, looking up at me, and I said, I don't really care. I'm going to stand in this one spot of sun like a cat, because that's what feels good. And I wish the whole room was like that all the sun was coming in where it should. But yeah,
I would say that, daylight is dynamic. And so it changes throughout the day, every minute, every second, and transforms. If we're talking about the inside of a space, obviously the building itself looks differently, but it transforms your perception of the space as the sun moves through the sky. If you have south-facing and north-facing windows, north-facing, of course, you tend to get a more constant light there, which is nice for certain things. Whereas artificial or electrical lighting is something that's very program related and has to be constant for you to work within the program space. If you're just going to photograph your space, which is what, then we set up all the lights to make it look really, really great. But for the day-to-day use of the space, the lighting has to work with the daylight, and also because, for example, we do a lot of classrooms. You can't have direct sun on your desk. In the classroom, you have to be able to control that light, but you also need 40-foot candles on your desk at all times for the kids. So you do both. The room feels better because it has the daylight. The kids can have a view out. It enlivens the space. But when they get down to doing the arithmetic, they need the light at a specific place at a specific time. So I think there's this you need both, but one really works better for you for your program.
Things are going to become much more programmable.
That's true. I was going to talk about that later. Yeah, and I think it's actually becoming more programmable for code reasons because the requirements for daylight harvesting, they call it, where your lights dim as more sunlight comes into the room, so you don't need it, which saves energy. And also, I think we're going to find in the future that the actual program of whatever the kids are doing or whoever's doing in the room, either the room will sense it or there'll be a way to adjust it so the lights will automatically adjust to exactly to the requirements. But it's been shown in many studies that kids learn better and perform better if they have good daylight. So
Makes
it's
sense.
important.
All right.
Let's do the presentation.
Oh my gosh, we're all fired up.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean, a little bit.
Okay, so I'm going first. This is Tobias Holden, or I am Tobias Holden, Banks Landau Lighting Design. We are a lighting design firm in San Francisco. And I wanted to make this, I always take a chance to make a presentation, trying to just dissect who am I? Why am I here? What am I doing here? What is lighting design? Why is it important? So I wanted to start off with the idea that kind of like Corbusier's quote, light is really mysterious and really ephemeral, and you don't see it until it strikes the surface, right? So here we have darkness and a surface, right? And when light interacts with the surface, right, it can reflect off of that surface, or it can be refracted through the surface. And the interaction of light and form is really what a lighting designer does all day, every day. Where is that light coming from? What is it doing to the form? And what can materiality and light, how does that interact? Like when these two things interact, what takes place essentially is what I think about all day. And jumping right in, because this is a short pitch essentially, but in the construction process, right, we're talking about architectural lighting design. And I always like to think about it as this kind of like loose concept that grows and gets more and more complex as you get into the process. And lighting design, which is, my classic little A lamp here, you can all see it right here, is coming in right at design development phase. This is when the RCPs first start to gel. Although a lot of light comes from the top down, I think it's just we're used to it as humans, again, going back to that sky dome idea. But right as RCPs start to gel, lighting designer can get engaged and really start to parse out what the architecture means. And I'm talking pretty quick, so please, we're going to have questions later. And we also deal with a lot of how to convey architectural lighting, because design in general is a leap of faith, right? And as lighting designers, we developed at my practice essentially a bunch of ways to convey architectural concepts, like where do beautiful sparkles exist? Where do you need higher light levels? Where can you create contrast, right? I think we're very visual beings. Like a lot of our brain is devoted to processing visual information. So I think we yearn for contrast where it can exist. So we have developed a lot of ways to convey these kinds of concepts. But then really quickly, lighting designers get into the kind of drier parts of documentation, right? Like the spreadsheets, the calculations, the calling out of all the fixture types. Where are they? What are they doing? How are they installed? What's the exact part number of that fixture down to the letter, right? These are our toolkits being employed. I moved pretty quickly again, but into CDs, a lot of final detailing occurs. Like, how will this ribbon of light transfer through the staircase actually? Like, what are those actual attachment points and how do they actually work? And working really closely with architects to enable these concepts to come to life. And then moving into CA, I mean, we go to site all the time to make sure that here we are on site with that same kind of ribbon of light. We tested out clearance issues, right, with stringing up these ribbons through the space, but ultimately, the client tasked us with coming up with some beautiful way to illuminate this staircase that didn't involve some kind of custom chandelier, right? Something you could just buy and say like, okay, we need to fill this space, figure it out, other lighting designer. We instead chose to figure out how to employ string lights, that you put in a backyard in the most thought out way humanly possible, like all kinds of sailboat connection points to try to figure out how that all goes together and gets through the staircase. But that's just an example of like how we parse out these different parts of lighting design. And in my mind, these 6 images, these are the ones that I'm really proud of, because on the bottom are the architect's initial renderings of what they wanted to achieve, and the top is the final space for each of these projects. And I think this is just the tenacity of like a lighting partner with an architect saying, this is what we want to achieve. It has to be this way, and not letting anything come between the concept and the final executed space, and what lighting actually needs to take place above that slatted ceiling to give you that infinite effect. How much space do you need before those linear fixtures start to read as individual lines of light instead of this beautiful blended experience above that ceiling? So these are the questions that we tackle every day, and how we do it is essentially a blending of a bunch of different people at our firm. We're 17 designers and 5 admin people, and we come from all kinds of backgrounds. Like we have Imagineers on staff, a lot of ex-theatrical people who are electrical engineers by trade. So we apply all those different disciplines essentially to solve these kinds of problems, make sure the lighting comes off without a hitch. So that's what I do every day, all day. Yay, thanks everybody. I'm gonna pass it along. Keep it cruising.
Excellent. Thank you.
Of course.
So my name is Kai Jaffe, and I'm an outside specification rep for 16500. So I've liberal arts, I started, then I went back, got a master's degree in industrial design, where I really always said I wanted to help other people design their things better. And so from there, I was in human-centered design and then moved into lighting, which was perfect because it was all about what are the users in the space and what do they need? Kind of what we were just talking about. Without the electric light, a space is just as good as just when there's light outside. So to make it more useful. So I was at Peerless Lighting, where I started with product development, and I did my first light was a T5. So I started, in 2010. And then by the end, I was running that brand. So everything from this design strategy all the way through manufacturing, even marketing and sales. So I could really take that one string and bring it all the way through. Then went to innovation strategy and then back to lighting, where it's really lovely to have a group and a different conversation. Everyone knows the words, and it's a whole little community. So I also live in the East Bay with my 2 daughters, and I paint. So for me, looking at light is how I see the world, light and dark. So at 165, we have about 100+ manufacturers that we represent. So as a lighting rep, we only get paid if one of these lights from one of these manufacturers go and get bought. So we're the ultra local representative of these manufacturers. We also have an amazing inside team that does the big work. And so that's calculations, thinking about, well, how much light does it need? Doing those calculations to say, yes, these lights will give you that fixture selection, budgets, all of that stuff. And also the manufacturing stuff after is not these team, but we have that team. We also have a team that helps with controls. Now in California, if you have lighting, you have to have controls. So we have a whole team that specializes in that, which is very important. Certain controls don't work with certain lights, and really understanding that is really is a full-time job. So we help the architects and the lighting designers and engineers really think deeply about this lighting work, because they have so much they need to work on. We're that part of knowing all of this stuff that they don't need to know, or they know some, and we can help, just like Tobias was saying. I think that's it for me.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you.
So before we move on to the architects, any questions for light designers based on, or lighting reps and designers based on this, specifications? Oh, actually, I'm just bringing a mic.
For your Tobias, for your application image with the slat ceiling, how did you accomplish that effect?
So that's we didn't want to have a kind of stretched backlit material there because of we wanted it to feel like just beyond, just open, right? So above each of those slats, we have just the world's tiniest LED fixture with a frosted lens on top of it. And then naturally, the architect said, oh, you've got 2 feet above these slats. You've got all of this space. It's going to be fine. So we started off with these wider spacing of those fixtures and we mocked it up in our office to make sure it blended really nicely. But then, boop, the plenum got tiny all of a sudden. So we had to up the quantity of those linear fixtures, but it's just linear fixtures firing up into a mixing chamber of white paint.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then what was the project in the center application image that you had? What is that project? Yeah, it was
It
really
is pretty
impressive.
crazy. It's an NDA project down south near LA. It's the entrance to their theater. And those are stretched reflective, like a new matte material again, like it's like a Barasol, I think was the final spec.
Okay.
But it's a mirrored Barasol, and then we did a mixture of fiber optics to get the small sparkles. But then we needed performance lighting to come from these same forms that were also hiding these crazy HVAC units. So there are actual downlights in there that we played with the pattern to make them feel like planets. That was the pitch, stars and planets.
I mean, that's what it looks like. It looks like you captured it inside the space, which is very cool.
Oh, thank you.
Anyone else while I'm standing? All right,
What's that?
go for it.
Right. As he introduced, Bill Bondi with Studio Bondi Architecture, formerly Starkweather Bondi Architecture. And before that, I was with Kathy Simon's office, SMWM, for 15 years. We've been in business 25 years next January. And then for that, 5 years with Lanier Cheryl Morrison, Albert Lanier, who was Ruth Asawa's husband. That's why I happened to be on the panel speaking. And I'm going to say that just in our office, probably we've done about 400 projects or so since we started it, and 100% of them have lighting. It's just like, you cannot get away from it. And so I guess it makes me an expert, right? Because anyway, I was just going to show a couple, 8 or 9, I guess, plot projects real quickly showing different kinds of lighting problems that we had. We basically do 95% of our work is pre-K through 12th grade education, private schools, religious schools, and charter schools. We've had a couple of DSA projects, but it's very difficult for us to get those because we haven't done any. And but within schools, you get all different kinds of programs. You get theaters, kitchens, dining halls, classrooms, gymnasiums. So and then we've done other nonprofits we'll show you. So this is the urban school, San Francisco. That was a Catholic gymnasium for the church next door. And so I just want to show an example how the lighting on the inside can become a lantern to the outside. And I actually commissioned personally it's a piece of art by Hugh and Starkweather, who happened to be my old partner's sister, showing the ecology of the San Francisco Bay Area, which is on the glass. So it's in nighttime, you see it as a lantern going out. On the daytime, it's a lantern to the inside. This is the interior lobby, which was of the old gymnasium. And there, I was going to say, almost all of our projects, we work with a lighting designer. In fact, we're now doing a lot of design build work, and we insist that we have a lighting designer on our team. That's our only consultant. If nobody else, we carry the lighting designer because we feel it's the only way to get the kind of expertise that you need, not just from a scientific or physical standpoint, but from somebody who has the experience of knowing how the space is going to react to the light that they've put into it. So these sort of donut-shaped fixtures here were picked to sort of complement the archways. Those archways are where the doors used to be. We pushed it out to the sidewalk there. And then we get into occasionally decorative lighting. This is a theater space, so the owner wanted sort of a more Carnegie Hall style decorative lighting or something. Actually, they brought in an interior designer to pick that fixture. So, but it came out pretty nicely, and that's a it was customized from the original. And then classroom space, you can see it's just simple linear fixtures, and that's typically what we use in classroom space. It's very good and dimmable. And then we were able to open up that Oculus up there, which brings in sort of a variety of light during the day, and all the old industrial sash were repaired. But I just wanted to show you the mistake we made working with the designer. But if you can see the acoustic panels up there, there's a sort of a cove light shining up. Well, the lighting designer spec'd the cove light, but he didn't know we were going to put the acoustic panels on the wall. So it's basically lighting the bottom of the acoustic panels. So that's the only mistake in 25 years that we've made. And I would point it out. And this is the actual theater space here. And I think what's interesting here is it's fairly typical we have these sort of 9-wood or Madrid wood walls on the sides, which all the acoustics and the ventilation, everything is coming through there. But at the ceiling level, we created what's called a tension grid, which allows the kids to walk up above the theater and do all the lighting. But all the lighting is above the tension grid that lights the space. And so the work lighting, when you're working the space, the audience lighting, except for underneath the gallery spaces where we have recessed lighting. So you can see that on the slide on the left, you can see for me, because it doesn't feel like there's any floor at all, but, and so all the theatrical light just goes right through that grid. And, see it at the Yorba Buena Center in San Francisco, that's the way the ceiling in that theater is. And this is another theater we did for the Harker School, and just showing how how important it is to get the lighting coordinated, because at nighttime you can see that it's all nice and proper, and it does give a glow. But that's something actually Kathy Simon, my old boss, was really strong on, was to make sure that when you saw it at nighttime, all the lights in every room were in the same pattern and that sort of thing. It does make a difference. This is the interior of the Harker Theater. And here we worked with the lighting designer, the lighting manufacturer, the casework manufacturer, all these panels, because all the lights are recessed in inside those panels. And so getting that to fit, to get the right depth in there, to make it so you can actually get to replace the bulbs and all this sort of thing. It was a very complex job with a bunch of different trades, which was great. And so that really creates most of the light in the room. You can see some down lights as well, but by doing it that way, it really brought out the wood and the warmth of the space, which otherwise could have been a very large and empty space. This is the same project next door. It's a gymnasium where the gym was all north-facing clear story lights. And so they don't actually have to turn the lights on in the daytime at all with that. And but at nighttime, you can see we use the structure of the building to support the linear fixtures in there. If you could, yes, you can see that, right? And this is a light project we did in the East Bay. I had to bring one in Embry-Riddle, and we didn't do any lighting in this at all because Silverman and Light did their own lighting, believe it or not. But I just thought I'd show it. We did the renovation work, and they did all the lighting in there. Then this is a recently completed project for the San Francisco Zen Center, which was Julia Morgan building. It's at Page and Laguna in San Francisco. Beautiful, beautiful building. And basically this side of the first floor was just a sort of a rabbit warren of offices and closets. And so we gutted it out keeping the original structure, and created a welcome center and bookstore for them. And just side note, not to do with lighting at all, but that picture there on the right that's Suzuki Roshi, the founder of the center. That's an origami portrait with 8,000 origami pieces, and it was done by Ruth Asawa's granddaughter, so who taught her to do origami. But so this is a variety of lighting. You've got the sort of spherical bookstore, a display case. There's little side pin lights that light all the objects in the display case. And then you can see there's some lights that light.
Very proud of that. I, I mean, I won't say a lot about Gensler also because I think a lot of people know Gensler. We have 57 offices globally, 22 offices outside of the United States. We have 6 offices in this region. So, and 3 of them are in the Bay Area. So San Jose, San Francisco, and Oakland. But what I do for Gensler, I specialize in adaptive reuse and building repositioning. We like to call it building transformation. But I've been doing commercial interiors for many years. I've done lifestyle, I've done, hotels and restaurants, but for the last 10 years, I'm really focusing on adaptive reuse and building repositioning. So, 300 Lakeside Drive is the old Kaiser Center in Oakland. If you know it, it's right on the lake. It's very grand and tall, 28 stories, built in 1957. So we had a client come to us back in 2015 and they said, listen, we're going to reposition this building. We need you to do something. So what you see here is the original lobby. Not that it hadn't had anything done to it, but pretty much the original lobby from 1957. A lot of the so I think actually when I look at this, I say, that's pretty good lighting for 1957, right? I'm very impressed. The detailing in the building, very mid-century, was very good. But it definitely needed an upgrade. It's a bit of a heavy feeling when you came into the building. So we took that lobby from this. So I think this is you still see that they the two-story lobby and we left the atrium there. It's not really a true atrium, but the stairs they were 2 switchbacking escalators that took you to the 2nd level. So we removed those. It was a very big job, but I think what this is a great example of expressing the geometry in the architecture, right? And kind of showcasing the material. So you have this like grand travertine stair, but look at all the light, right? The light, this would be nothing without the light. And so we've got this like jewelry hanging from the ceiling, right? There's the pendant, but all of these cove lights that really kind of express the geometry and the materials of this space. I think it really, we were going for that kind of timeless mid-century materials. But when I look at this project, I think that the lighting here, it's about the interior architecture. That is what we're trying to express here. So there's light that does different things. And for me, this is about just like the linear, the geometry, and that just like classic architecture. So now I think this is just really a great example. This project is Ariat. If you know Ariat, if you have a pair of cowgirl boots or a cowboy hat, Ariat is Gap's version of their Western wear. And they moved their headquarters to San Leandro, California, which is where I live actually. And so this is their workspace. This is all about the task lighting, right? This is not about really, unfortunately, the people who work in the space. The lighting is great, but that's not what this project is about. This project is about how do I look when I try on my boots? They have a fitness room that is in there. So if you've ever been into a really good fitness room, lighting means everything because it can make you buy that or just walk out and just, go on a diet. It just really depends. This is their basically they've got all the cowboy boots in here, all of the leather and everything. And so task lighting is essential. They need to have everything evenly lit, perfectly evenly lit in this room. You also have the daylight. So they're doing a lot of work. Everything is very technical here. And then you can see here on the left, these are fabrics, different types of leather and materials. And you've got the light like shining right on them. And then on the right, the same. You've got different types of denim with all the drawers and the fabrics and everything. And what they're really trying to do is just get that true color rendering so that they know, what fabrics go with what. It's very, very much task lighting. And then I just threw in this picture because I just love the ropes. This is their dining area. And you've got just like those ropes on the wall. So that's just a little bit of fun. And this project was Banks Lendell too, that we work with. So really, it was just really, I just love the fun concept, and I love that we help people do their job better with lighting, right? This is a confidential healthcare project with had a very strong concept of ocean, desert, sky, and forest. So the lighting here was all about making the patient feel at ease. This is a healthcare facility where people can get very, worked up. And so throughout the entire project, that's what it was meant for. So this is like the desert that we're looking at now, very calming. You can see the light coming in through the windows. And then you can see their pediatric division here, which we could not have a lighting designer. The budget was very tight, and the client was, didn't want us to have any other consultants. But we worked very closely with 16500 to get some details, right? So Gensler would draw it up. This is kind of what we want. This is where we think that the light source should be. Like, are we right or are we wrong? How many, what are the foot candles? What are the lumens that we need to use to execute what we'd like to do?
What is your material from the wall?
Are here?
Like the wall?
Here? I think this is just back painted glass. Yeah, yeah. And this is a perforated metal panel here. And I wish I could tell you what I would think it's a very even spread of light. I don't know what light fixture they used above that. But I do know that on these acrylic panels, there was like an LED tape that was kind of, glowing down. So 1100 Broadway is, this is a 18-story building that we married with a 1911 Keystone building in Oakland, downtown Oakland, that had been abandoned since 1984 from the Loma Prieta earthquake. So that building had been sitting there empty for a very long time. And our client came in and said, hey, how can we put these two together? It's a historic building, so you can't get rid of it, but we also want an 18-story building here. So what can we do? This project was very near and dear to me. This ceiling is an undulated CNC, so it's like, plywood or MDF that's sandwiched and then CNC. So you've got these combs, they're giant combs. They kind of go from 16 inches deep to 36 inches deep, and they undulate across, and then they're fed into another comb. So how do you light that, right? You've got like all these different undulations. And so what we did, and this was also design build. We worked very closely with Lutron, and we had LED tape at every third blade had LED tape at the top of it. And then above that, it was suspended from a ceiling that's not quite different than this. So acoustic panels that were all white. So you have these LEDs that are very evenly lighting that white ceiling above and just casting a glow, right? And what's great is that you can see the depth, you can see the undulation in the architecture. So this is very expressive, and pin lights every now and then that are almost like just little jewels of light that are.
Did you have a mock-up of that to test
We
it?
did. We had about a 5x5 mock-up of of combs that were like up to my hip, you know, and then that 5x5 section of a slight undulation, it was just a slight undulation, was put up about 20 feet, because that first story is very high. And it was just sitting there for months. So yeah, definitely a mock-up. You gotta, when we don't work with a lighting designer, and which is not my preference, we have to mock it up. There's no room for error. I mean, oftentimes we're really kind of like begging for a lighting designer. You know, like, listen, you're gonna go wrong if you don't. I think 90% of the time we have lighting designers.
It's amazing to me that they could afford that ceiling and not afford a lighting designer.
It's not even about that.
How
Yeah.
much do you guys charge?
It's almost not even about that. It's about working so closely with the you know, the fabricators of the ceiling, and then this was also like partly a design build project, so you don't always get the choice, but agreed. And then you can see there the buildings that they actually cut the side of the historic building off. And so you can actually walk from one floor to the other. But I love this because you see where old meets new, and you can see the expression of the structural dampers that go up the side. Painted white purposely, so and you can see the light shining through, and you can see the damp project here in Berkeley Commons. And this is really more, I'm just wanting to show this for that exterior lighting. We worked with Lumenworks on this project, and it's really a beautiful piece of architecture, I think, but nothing without the lighting, because when you drive by at night, you can see just how linear it is. It's almost like floating on Aquatic Park. And there's really a lot of landscape lighting means everything here, because you've got this pathway that's right along Aquatic Park with all of these native plants and everything. This is a quick pic of the lobby, which was mostly again with Banks Lundell, but a lot of custom lighting done here, which was not really our decision. We were not the interior designer on the lobby, but we did execute the lobby exactly as requested. But again, I just love all of the exterior lighting. It's like magical. You see a lot of the reflection of the sky and the water.
And is that lighting providing the access, the exit lighting as well? It's being decorated in for across the site?
Across the entire campus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it gives enough foot candles for.
I think, I mean, there's also lighting on, like, you know, like stanchions and things like that. Yeah. Yeah. So that's it. Thank you.
Wonderful. I'll go into questions, but if you have anything you want to slip in, based on your presentations. Oh, yeah.
I'm not a question.
Then you gotta do it.
Thank you, everybody. It was amazing to see lighting from each aspect of lighting, architectural lighting. My question is for, I think, all of you, if you can answer that. How often do you get each other's involved in a project to reduce the possibility of anything goes wrong? The reason I'm asking is I've seen examples of the time that architect did the lighting, did the layout, architectural layout, and they forgot to update the lighting designer. And so the ceiling system was wrong. And so the whole reflected ceiling plan went wrong. And so how often do you guys talk to each other about a project to prevent this kind of thing going wrong? Thank you.
I could start with that. We bring, I think I said before, in almost all of our owner architect agreements, we include a lighting designer as a consultant. And whether or not we have any other consultants or not, usually we would often have structural engineering. We don't give that away easily. But we always have a lighting designer on a project, unless it's really small project or unless it's design build, which we're currently doing a classroom building for Harker School, and DEF CON construction says we're doing the lighting design. And we said, well, there's a theater, a multi-purpose space, and a library. We'd like to have a lighting designer for that. So in that case, we have a lighting designer just for those two spaces. And DEF CON has got, I think they've got Engineering Enterprise or somebody like that that's doing the lighting. But it's pretty straightforward classroom lighting. But typically, we would bring the lighting designer in during schematic design in the beginning of the project, not so much during conceptual design. And that's really to establish sort of the specifications and the standards for the project, because the owner always wants a cost estimate. And you really have to make sure that the big problem for us is the contractor, because almost all of our projects are a selected general contractor bid to subcontracts. And so if the general contractor doesn't put enough money in at the beginning, then when you get to the end, then you're into this value engineering business. So we want to make sure that they understand that if it's a theater, there's going to be a lot more specialized lighting than in a classroom, and they have to look back at examples of work they've done in the past and what the square foot cost of that lighting is. And so we recommend bumping the lighting budget up at the beginning. And so then once we have the form of the building laid out in schematics, then we bring the lighting designer back in and start talking about how we're going to shape the space and illuminate the space and what the requirements are. And of course, that ties in with all of our other consultants and the builders. And so then it's really design development and construction drawings, which somebody showed a CD drawing. And so it's like that. And during construction, we bring them out periodically when needed. And usually it's not so much them coming out, it's them calling people on the phone, say, well, can't we get these lights faster, or can we change this and make it still work? And so they're very helpful as much at the end as they are at the beginning to pull it off. So I'll defer to these guys. That's been my experience, is that you need them all the way through the process and to make it work well. And like you say, it just doesn't come out as nice if you
Yeah.
don't do that.
No, I think, I mean, as a lighting rep, we have two sides of the business. We have the spec side, which is me, which I get emails, oh, we're looking for something like this, kind of in design development, or even a little further on, and then I give ideas. But then we have this whole construction contractor distributor side that works kind of what you're saying. At the very end, it needs to be VE'd. How do we do this? And so that's when we can talk around, well, I know the specifier. Great, well, let's talk to the specifier, let them know there's going to be a VE. What do they need to keep on the project that has to keep, because things always change. And so I think that's really important. Different than, I imagine as a lighting designer, I'm imagining, you have your lights and these are the ones I want. And I want these because they do exactly what I want them to do. And I think what's great with using a lighting designer is most often contractors aren't going to change lighting from a lighting designer. They know it was thought about and they're not going to say yes. But in all those other projects, contractors do that all the time. And so that to be able to talk back and forth is really important, kind of what you were asking.
I just want to add that the specifications are very important, although you don't see it. But when the contractor comes back, which often happens with a package, and so you've got a whole array of lighting they've specified, and then they bring it to you guys or whoever, and you don't rep a couple of these people, so you've brought in something which is supposedly equivalent to create this package that you can bid and make the price that the contractor wants. The specifications are what you rely on to determine whether those substitutions actually meet the same values and illumination and all that as the original. And I actually called Dave Orgashard, lighting designer, today and asked him, well, what is the issue with that? He said, well, turns out a lot of things that look exactly the same, appear to have the same luminaires or whatever in them, perform differently for whatever reason. And you have to go back very carefully and look at the specifications for the light fixture that's being substituted to make sure it performs the same. And if it does and it's cheaper, then why not? But if it doesn't, then you have an argument. Then you have, and often have to involve the owner, because they're going to want to go with the less expensive solutions typically.
Can I just say that my experience and what happens is, unfortunately, because the lighting designer's budget is limited a lot of times, it's been cut back, whatnot. And they know how many hours they have to put up into this project. What happens is you, even if you distribute the drawings every month, at the end of the month, and you make sure that they are keeping up with it, they can't and don't have the time to put into it. They're gonna wait until towards the end of that DD or towards the end of whatever to then work on it and fix it. And that happens a lot.
Sure it does.
Mhm.
Yeah, we just take a loss on the project and give them extra money. What?
All right, the question was, there's challenges with potentially fee from lighting designers that they don't have enough fee potentially to update their drawings as frequently as weekly issuance of a BIM model or whatever it is, that they'll wait to the end, and that could create some coordination issues at all the different phases.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got to pay them better. I mean, it's really worth it to.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
they can barely afford to keep the lights on in their house, and so, you know, they're well worth it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so I mean, on the subject of time and money, right? The two biggest constraints in the world. I mean, like at our firm, we've developed a lot of like documentation methods to get around these kinds of issues, right? Do we carry BIM through DD and then do we switch to a red line markup through CDs when the architects are owning the RCPs essentially, and there are minor tweaks? Saves you hours and hours and hours and hours of time of updating BIM models when you don't really want to, or the process isn't demanded anymore. So it's about, and then we live in the age of weekly recurring meetings for every single thing under the sun, right? So the weekly recurring Zoom meetings are very helpful in that way. But then on the subject of communication, I think it's like as much as humanly possible, right? But I think what I've seen the most frequently where the disconnect is finishes and like the perception of brightness in spaces, I think is where it falls apart a lot. All of a sudden a wall goes from a medium gray to a charcoal, and now your video conferencing does not work, right? So that's why I've seen the biggest disconnects. And it's always one of those things where I show up and like, you should have called me. I would have answered any, like, I mean, yeah, because at the end of the day, it's a lighting issue, right? So regardless of what the finishes are. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's just about, it's always about time management, right? But at the end of the day, with our names on it, I go and do whatever it takes, honestly.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't know if this is on, but yeah, I mean, our expectation is that you know, we don't go to a consultant and tell them what their fee is. We ask them what their fee is. We give them the schedule, we give all the scope of work. I always like to have an introduction to the project and say, here's the design intent, and you know, give us a proposal. And my expectation, just like the client's expectation, is that we are coordinating together and we're staying on top of it. We have an abundance of meetings. And we like to, sometimes I actually even have different team members take on different consultants because they're speaking the same language, right? I don't always have the architect coordinating directly with the lighting designer if I know that my interior designer is on top of it and they're also technical. So they're kind of like straddling those two roles and they can, you know, talk the talk. So I think it's, you know, that is the expectation is, you know, an expectation of excellence, really. And then we'll get it done. It's a lot worse if you don't. I mean, when lighting goes bad, people get very, very upset. I cannot. And then it's in, and what are you gonna do? And it's not cheap.
Yeah.
So it's gotta be right.
I would say that loyalty is a huge factor in success in architecture with the people we work with. And if you work with, if you get a good job from somebody and the next time they come back with a little bit higher fee, they did a great job for you last time, it's well worth paying what they want. And over the years, when something goes bad and you need them to come out there and save your skin, you got somebody you can call. So I would say, if you like working with this guy, stick with it. Or this guy.
Maybe it's a variation of the last question, but it occurs to me there's kind of the spectrum of, you know, the clients that really don't give you a choice of how many consultants you carry. And then there's the clients who really get the value of each consultant. And it's not even a discussion. It's like, of course, that's important. Yes, we're going to engage a consultant. And then there's everyone in between. And for a segment of the everyone in between, there's the clients where you convince them of a value of a, you know, a certain consultant service, and you get them over that threshold, but then it's the question of how much. And it's like, well, okay, I get Winston, I get, you know, the value of this, but oh, can we just have them a little bit on the project? So I'm just wondering, from all of your perspectives, have you kind of amassed any sort of set of arguments or, you know, like tactics for, you know, kind of addressing that to like bring those kind of the needed expertise to a project?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I build my team. I tell the, you know, I try to tell the client, this is who we need on the team, right? And more often than not, at least for my projects, because I do work on larger projects, I can have that team. This is the team that we need in order for your project to be successful. It includes the lighting designer. You know, on my teams, I have a door hardware consultant. You know, back in the day, architects we used to do the door hardware ourselves. And there's always this genius in the corner who knew door hardware. And now you've got consultants who do that. And I love these people. They're amazing. It's like a family. You become a family, a team for the client. Every now and then there is a project that you want this project, and they are going to beat you down on the fees, and they know the industry, and they say, well, we know you guys can do this, and you can call so and so, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is exhausting, right? Okay. And you have to make decisions, right? And sometimes we say, listen, well, if this is how it's going to be, we can't carry these consultants, but maybe you can carry the consultants and there won't be a markup on them. But we recommend that you have this consultant anyway, and they can be direct under you. We would never not recommend a lighting consultant. And sometimes we just don't win. But for the most part, I love to build my team, and it always includes a lighting consultant. So you do have to, you got to go back to, this is what's going to make your project a success, right? You got to keep saying that over and over again. So.
Another for other projects, kind of like the was it Kaiser you were showing that 16,500 helped you with, or no, it was
No, that was the confidential
confidential.
healthcare
But
client.
for things like that, I mean, the argument is you're not billable hours, and maybe you don't have enough money to hire a lighting designer. And as I said in the very beginning, we get paid from the manufacturer. So it's a no-brainer that we can help with calculations. And yes, it would be great if you used my lights. That's the give and take. And then we can work and we can say, oh, this is what you're trying to do. Oh, here are 6 different manufacturers that do that. And here are different price points for your budget. Let's figure out what works. So for at least as a rep, it's a very easy argument because they don't have to pay for a lighting designer. We're not doing lighting design though, like you do. That's not what we do. We're helping and we're supporting, and we know how to speak that language. And we can do the calculations and know what fixtures, and even more, because we work with lighting designers all the time. We know what manufacturers are doing well right now. We know who's moving their production, and maybe we shouldn't use them, even though it's something you always want to use. Maybe right now that's not the best, but we have these other 2. Let's use these ones. And so there's a lot of that background stuff of since we're the super local rep, that background things that you don't think about for manufacturing, that something's wrong. Oh, we know that. And maybe we should go to this or that. And so that's also another part that we can help lighting designers and architects.
I love this question personally because, in my deck, there's a lot of we're super fortunate to be able to work with architects who see the value and we're part of the team, part of the family, and we're baked in. And those are the projects that I have up on slides. But there are a lot of projects like residential projects, hospitality projects, restaurant projects, where people are like architects are lighting curious, or they've never worked with a lighting designer before. They see the value and they want to bring us in. And I have decks upon decks of what's a lighting designer, pitches to clients. So who are these people? What are they doing here? Because when they say lighting designer, oh, focusing fixtures on Broadway. What do I need one here in this architectural project, right? So I think it's a lot about education about how much lighting can bring to a space and how much it can transform experiences and people that's valuable to everybody, whether they're thinking about it or not, right? So it's a lot of lighting education, lighting 101, right? What am I doing here? So those are my favorite pitches of that.
I would just add that we build the teams, and it's not, we're putting in presenting to the owner a budget for all our fees compiled together. They don't usually they don't hit us up for, well, the structural engineer is too expensive or this guy's too expensive. They want to know, are you at 12%? Are you at 4%? Well, like that. So we have sort of that mark to make first. But when it comes to reducing the cost, for the lighting designer, you have to think about, well, how much is it going to cost me to pay my guy sitting next to me to be on the phone with all these people and to do all this other work at his billing rate? And wouldn't it be just a lot easier if I could have him work on something that we need to get done and have somebody else that we can pay? And plus, if we get it, we get the markup on it too. So there's actually a added value. So we really fight hard for our consultants to not ever cut their fees that they ask for. Occasionally we have to do it. And if we have to do it, we go out to all of them and try to get it even across the board and say, couldn't you guys help us out? We're trying to get the fee down to this. But in general, with our clients, because they're not dictated by school DSA regulations or University of California regulations, which are maximum fees, we're able to be pretty successful in negotiating our fees. And I'll have to say that, we're usually pretty right on. We either break even on the fees or this money. We never make huge profits on anything because we cut it as close as we can to what we think the owner can afford, and hopefully make a little bit of profit at the end of the day.
All right. So what makes a successful collaboration between lighting designers and architects? We've kind of nibbled at the edges of that.
Is that what makes it successful?
Yeah. How do you find a successful collaboration?
I say it's having somebody working with the same people that you know ongoing. So I think I said to somebody, it's like you finish each other's sentences. You know what they're going to, you basically know sort of their approach going in, and then you could, like, we're doing this, with a different lighting designer, the library space at this Harker School, and we're trying to bring it up a little bit higher than the typical elementary school library. And so we've asked the DEF CON construction, we want a lighting designer for this, and we haven't worked with her before. So she's given, we want like 3 or 4 options, and then we can start bringing it down for the options on a very schematic level. And then once we sort of pick an option, then we get into, well, how's that going to fit into the ceiling space, into the cove space, that sort of thing, and how we're going to build it. I would say, for me, it's just working with similar people that you know, and doesn't mean I'm not open to working with new people, but you get a good sense of what you're going to get if you do that. But we do similar project types as well, generally. So if somebody handed us a Las Vegas casino, I would have no idea who to talk to.
I think the mark of a successful collaboration is that when you really connect on like once like I said, there's the mood boards, right, that are created before the lighting designer is even there, right? And you're there and you see the shell and you see the mood boards. And I think the joint understanding of what the space is ultimately trying to achieve, like from an atmospheric standpoint, like what's the goals of the space from a functional standpoint, like what are these hard constraints that need to exist? How many foot candles do these kids need every day, all day, right? And I think synthesizing like the hard numbers of what you actually need in the space, but how people feel in the space, I think is the mark of a successful collaboration in my mind. It's both things for me, for sure.
Yeah. I think it's these moments when you build the relationships, right? Because it's all like fun and games until there's an issue, right? So just like as an example, you might have like a custom, let's say, wood slat ceiling, which is like becoming a thing. And then now I need to fit light in between each of those. And then you say, okay, we've got the fixture, everything is good, everything is wonderful. It's in the specs, it's in the project manual, we're all coordinated. And then you start construction. Oh, did you actually know that we're gonna put a roof drain there, and this wall needs to be further out. And now you're scrambling, and now said we were gonna do this at that light cove, but how can we not disrupt the light? But those like moments of like problem solving during CA. I mean, I love CA because it really shows you what you've got and what you're dealing with. And I think there's so much relationship building when you're in construction after design, and you're solving all of those like sticky issues. Because then you see how, are people able to keep their cool? Are they able to problem solve on the fly? Can you answer that RFI in 48 hours and find a new spec? And so I think that's, to me, like, that's those moments, those really difficult moments when.
That brings up a very good point. I think it's really important to have a meeting with your lighting designer and your electrical sub superintendent in the field, and go over all the expectations at the beginning of construction. And it's so helpful for them to get friendly with each other. And because, as you're saying, I forget, it's something like it, nobody's perfect. And sooner or later, you're going to run into something where that guy has to meet with your guy again and come up with a solution. And it's really great to not have an argument about it, to have them go ahead and take the lead and fix whatever it is that needs to be fixed. So, and that goes with all we feel very strongly in having a close relationship with the folks that are building in the field, because we do a lot of renovation work and adapt reuse and that stuff, and nothing ever fits. Ever.
I love you guys talking about relationships, and I think that's key. I think one nuance is maybe it's trust. There's a certain trust that I need to build with, I'm thinking of this one lighting designer where things went wrong. Things are already in. He was working with me and he trusts me to fix it or come up with a solution in some way. Talk to the manufacturer, what went wrong? How do we do this? What's possible? What's not? And then I can go back to him. This is what's possible. It's going to be another 3 weeks. Or we can do it this way. And there's that trust built up where he then said, okay, then let's do this or that. So it's the relationship, but it's also building that trust over time that makes it good. Togetherness.
Yeah.
Next.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, question from the ether. Paint color on walls plays a key role in how lighting will appear. How do you determine what lighting will work with the color of paint? Is there a standard color of paint you work with?
Wow.
White.
White default.
There's so many whites there. So I have to say, we have in the office, we have, and this is like, I learned from one of our design directors who I absolutely adore. She had bundles of all her favorite whites and all of her favorite grays that she just kept on tap. And she just would like pull it, like, why, you don't need to go find another white. These two are the best whites, of the best warm whites, the cool whites, the gray whites. Oh, I mean, I can't say enough about white paint and how much it changes light.
I've heard Genslerites. Sorry, I call you all Genslerites. Talk about like their favorite PT ones.
Yeah, PT1.
What's your favorite PT one? But my favorite acronym as a lighting designer when it comes to this is LRV, light reflectance value. It's on everything. You look for it, that's how much light is reflecting off of that surface, right? And it's irrespective of hue, right? Which is a whole different conversation. But light reflectance value, the LRV value, it's a key
Yeah,
metric.
on the back of every paint sample.
Yeah, so keep an eye on those LRVs. Medium tones are your friend for video conferencing. I think that's my hot take moment.
Does the sheen do anything with that?
The specularity of it, that's like I call that like a micro effect, right? Like tile, for instance. The tile is like the bugbear, I think, of lighting design, because it can either look amazing or it can look incredibly horrible. You can make the tile setter incredibly mad at you. By bringing out all their beautiful imperfections of their grout work that they've been doing for 30 years.
So
That
bad.
I've never done before. But yeah, the specularity plays a huge part of it. But I think the light reflectance value is the key metric for sure.
All right.
I was just gonna say, I'm not an expert on color particularly, but I know that the way the light hits a colored wall affects the way that color looks, where it's a direct light on it, or there's a cove, or there's more of a general illumination. And of course, daylight makes it changes it altogether. We did a school project where the hallway had skylights in it, but then we used a color on the surrounding shaft. So as the light came to the skylight, it actually picked up that color, and it appeared as though we had colored lights up, and so you had these sort of bands of light, and so you really got colored light out of it that way. So that was another way we work with colors. So it's tricky, but it could really in school it can really be helpful. Of course, you get a lot of arguments that the kids are going to get too active if we have color, and so we fought this battle for years. But we're big fans of introducing color into projects.
All right, kind of go a little bit nerdy, or more deep into like, what lighting people do. How do you balance the aesthetics, code, regulations, building technologies, function, energy efficiency, all these things that are going into color of light on a wall? But that's even more nerdy. But yeah, just like there's so much that we're dealing with, and I think things are changing somewhat rapidly in the last 10 years, most of our careers probably. It's just, yeah, how do you, like, what things are really affecting lighting in those terms, and how do you deal with them?
Oh, just nerdery in general?
Yeah. Just like lighting dirty things, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think keeping your eye, for me, it's like keeping my eye on the prize, right? Like, it's so easy to get down into the weeds of like, oh, like, you know, the lighting power density in California is so tight. Can we afford how many linear feet of cove light can actually fit into this project? And is there a way that we could count that cove as a decorative effect and therefore falling to a different pool, categorizing it in a different way so we can have these great effects still, even though we're constantly shifting wattage downwards? But I think keeping an eye on the bigger picture of why are we lighting that cove in the first place? Is there a more cost-effective, energy effective way to achieve the same thing of lighting this wall? Could 3 wall sconces that have an indirect output achieve the same effects? So I think keeping an eye on the prize of where are your hard constraints that are unbreakable, right? Like where are your, it must be these foot candles for sharp knife use, right? The things that the people are actually going to take a light meter out and check for. That's rule number 1. You don't want, safety is safety first, right? But then beyond that, like the inspiration, the mood board, the mission of the space, right? I think that's what keeps me like diving through the dry stuff essentially, is to maintain those things.
I recently went to a talk, the INS talk at Light Fair, or not Light Fair, Light. And just thinking about how to use light differently is how I like to nerd out with light. Wow. And he was all about, it was a scientist from Germany. Some of us were there. He was talking about how light needs to be able to change with the space. So he was really about having more lights that can move around, and that you don't need even light, which is very different than we've been thinking, or IES has been thinking a long time, that maybe it's just we need light right here as we're doing our work, but maybe right here we don't need that light. And thinking differently about where do you need the light and where don't you need the light. And then I love bringing this then to architects to say, well, maybe we can think differently. I know you've always done it this way, but what if we try this and it still can meet IES standards and all those other things that you were just talking about?
Well, I don't think people perceive light and space any different than they did 10,000 years ago, or however far. I don't think humans have evolved particularly in the way they perceive things. And I just had it was an argument. We had sort of a discussion on lighting this library space I talked about at Harker with the design architect who's working with me. His name's Kevin Hart, who used to be a studio director at Gensler. At the end of it all, because everybody said, well, you can do this, you can do that. But there's going to be smoke detectors up here, and that's going to be in the way, and the sprinklers have to come through here. And we closed the meeting. I took Kevin out in the hall. I said, Kevin, you decide what you want it to look like. Then we'll get the technicians in here and we'll figure out how to build it. And I think that's really our approach is what is the effect you want? How do you want the space to feel? And over the course of the day, and that has to include, you know, people actually being able to read and that sort of thing. But you know, for me, that's the approach, is to just figure out what you want it to be, and turn to these guys and say, how can we achieve that? And you know, there's with the advent of LEDs, I mean, the configurations and the shapes and things you can do are sort of infinite. So you got to sort of know what you want to do before you, I mean, like the snakes and all that kind of stuff, or ropes. They were, sorry.
Yeah.
You got the
Ropes today, snakes tomorrow.
Yeah, but,
I think I'm just gonna kind of go to an area of growth that I think we have right now in lighting, which is lighting controls. And I think that it's often forgotten at the end of a project, right? And one thing I wish that we would do better as designers is kind of put our foot down. And I do try my best, but at the end of the project, you know, the client they want the job punched, they want the, you know, permit signed off, and they're ready to photograph. But I think I always like to say, can we have an early morning or late evening where we're not just thinking about the light in the day, right? Because remember, when the light in the day is different than the light at night, and going in there at dawn or dusk and setting the scene, setting the lighting control so that when, you know, it's that automatic on that comes on, and what percentage it comes on when people walk in the door when they go to work, or like even in the restroom, you know, can we set the scene? The lights have so many smarts now, they're so brainy, and we're wasting, it's like buying you know, the best version of an iPhone and then using it the same way you used the phone, you know, like 10 years ago. You should know the capabilities of the lights that you're specifying and the controls, and then kind of like fight for that. Like, just remember at the end, before we punch, we want to get in there when the furniture's all in, when the carpet's in, let's go in and set the scene so that we're really giving people what they paid for, right? And I wish that would happen more.
Yes.
And what they paid for should include training.
Oh, yes,
Because,
my gosh,
You need people.
the training.
I think that, we, Letty Made of Stacy, LMS just completed a gymnasium science building combo for University High School, and I toured it last week. And the lighting and mechanical controls, it's a zero net building, and everything is tied together. They have a whole big monitor, like 60-inch monitor with all these controls that controls the building. I don't know who knows how to use that thing, but it's necessary to use it in order to achieve the net zero that they're doing, because everything has to work in connection with each other. So I think that there could be too much complexity built into it for some users. And if you have an office building where you have a designated person who does that sort of thing, but in a school, sometimes things can get a little fall by the wayside.
Do you want to talk about controls?
I think we're good. That was good. I think that was a good end. You got
Where were you
it?
gonna go with that?
Well, yeah, can I say something really quick about controls? Controls are where the rubber hits the road with lighting. You've got this beautiful thing designed, and you have a bank of switches on the wall. That is not how you want to interact with the room. That has 8 different sources of light. Is to have an 8-gang box of switches on the wall, with each one unlabeled, trying to figure out what it does. To use the iPhone metaphor again, the beauty of the iPhone and smartphones in general now is that the complexity is hidden behind all this beautiful engineering and design that everybody's done to make them as usable as possible, right? And lighting control should be like that also. You should have a keypad on the wall that is all synthesized, baked down into 4 scenes and an off, right? And those scenes go through the client, figure out what the space wants to transform to, have them in order of 99% use case at the top, like everybody's so used to, turning lights on, off at the bottom, and you've essentially made the space so much more usable from a lighting standpoint. So that's all I wanted to say about lighting. It's a behavioral psychology, right? And I want,
Love it.
and residentially, this gets way more intense, right? Walking with the homeowner, learning how they actually use their home, right? Where do you come into your house? Do you come in through the garage mostly? You come in through the front door mostly? Like, do you need this kind of button that turns your whole home off but leaves on bedrooms for your parties? So there's all kinds of, I mean, the controls are honestly the most interesting part of lighting, I think.
I just wanted to add that LMS building is really great. They had strategies on daylighting and ventilation that I haven't seen in any other buildings like that in the city. So I didn't mean to say there's something wrong with it. It's really a beautiful job.
Well, thank you all. We covered a lot of ground. I think it's wonderful. Love to keep going with you guys, but I think that's it. So appreciate you
Thank
being
you.
here.